Europe in 1914 seemed peaceful, but tension had been building for decades. Countries were arming themselves, preparing for a war they believed was inevitable. Germany expanded its military rapidly, alarming neighboring nations, especially Britain. France, still bitter over previous defeats, rebuilt its army to reclaim lost territories. National pride was high, and militarism dominated politics. Leaders assumed that future wars could be swift, controlled, and victorious. Alliances divided Europe into two opposing blocs: the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente of France, Russia, and Britain. Ethnic tensions simmered within empires, particularly Austria-Hungary. Slavic minorities pushed for independence, creating internal instability. The Balkans became a dangerous hotspot, where Serbia's nationalism directly threatened Austria-Hungary. Russia supported Serbia, heightening tensions. Economic rivalries and colonial ambitions fueled mistrust among European powers. Germany's industrial growth challenged Britain and France globally. By mid-1914, Europe was a tinderbox. Leaders underestimated how deadly modern weapons would make any war. Propaganda glorified conflict, pressuring citizens to demand strong action. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo became the spark that lit the fuse. Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist, shot the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Austria-Hungary demanded justice. Serbia complied partially but refused full submission. Germany pledged support to Austria-Hungary, while Russia backed Serbia, activating alliances. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, triggering mobilizations across Europe. Germany prepared to attack France through Belgium, while Britain prepared to defend Belgian neutrality. The assassination combined with long-standing tensions made war inevitable. Europe watched anxiously as nations mobilized and diplomatic options disappeared. Germany's military buildup made it confident in a swift victory against France and Russia. Austria-Hungary hoped to crush Serbian nationalism quickly. France and Britain were drawn in by treaties and fears of German expansion. Russia mobilized to protect its Slavic allies. Long-standing rivalries, ethnic tensions, and military plans created a situation where no nation could easily step back. Industrialized armies and new weaponry promised unprecedented destruction. Countries assumed war would be quick, yet nobody foresaw the scale of carnage. Nationalism inflamed citizens' passions. Propaganda convinced the public that war was honorable and necessary. Minor territorial disputes could now escalate into global conflicts. Europe had become a continent on edge, waiting for a spark. Austria-Hungary's leaders saw the assassination as the perfect opportunity to assert dominance in the Balkans. Germany's support encouraged Austria-Hungary to act decisively and without fear of Russian retaliation. Serbia's limited compliance with Austria-Hungary's demands was insufficient, triggering diplomatic escalation. The alliance system activated quickly, ensuring that a regional conflict became a continental crisis. Germany planned to attack France through Belgium to quickly knock out one enemy before facing Russia. Britain prepared to enforce Belgian neutrality, a treaty obligation, drawing it into the conflict. By late July, Europe teetered on the edge of full-scale war. Mobilizations, ultimatums, and threats filled the headlines. Millions of soldiers stood ready, and civilians braced for the impact of a war they could scarcely imagine. Ethnic tensions inside Austria-Hungary continued to fester, adding urgency to the empire's decision to strike. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand acted as both a trigger and a symbol of deeper, unresolved tensions. Germany's growing confidence encouraged aggressive strategies, while France and Russia prepared to defend their interests. Nationalism, pride, and fear ensured that retreat was politically impossible for most nations. Industrial economies had built vast arsenals, making war a tangible and immediate threat. Propaganda spread rapidly, convincing populations that victory was achievable and necessary. The Balkans remained the focal point of European instability, where centuries-old rivalries simmered. Austria-Hungary believed that a decisive strike against Serbia could stabilize the region. Russia, fearing encirclement, moved troops to protect its Slavic allies and assert its influence. Germany's military planners anticipated rapid mobilization, leaving little room for diplomacy once conflict began. France prepared for a defensive and offensive campaign, determined to recover lost lands. Britain monitored the situation closely, ready to enforce international treaties and maintain the balance of power. Even minor incidents risked triggering full-scale mobilization because of rigid military timetables. Alliances ensured that war could not remain localized. Once Austria-Hungary acted, the entire continent moved toward conflict. The assassination revealed the fragility of Europe's political structure, showing how a single event could ignite widespread war. Military planners believed speed and precision could control the outcome, but they underestimated human and technological variables. Ethnic and nationalist tensions within empires amplified the stakes of each political decision. Colonial ambitions extended the reach of European rivalries far beyond the continent. Economic competition and industrial growth heightened mistrust between the great powers. Each nation believed that war might be unavoidable, but preparation would ensure victory. Public opinion, inflamed by media and propaganda, demanded strong leadership and decisive action. National honor and pride left leaders with little flexibility in diplomacy. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand gave Austria-Hungary a pretext to act against Serbia. Germany's full backing emboldened Austria-Hungary to issue an ultimatum it knew Serbia could not fully accept. Russia's support for Serbia triggered mobilizations that would pull France and Britain into the conflict. The assassination acted as the final catalyst for a war already brewing from decades of tension. By the end of July, mobilizations across Europe made war almost inevitable. Germany's strategy relied on quickly defeating France before facing a prolonged conflict with Russia. Austria-Hungary hoped for a short, decisive campaign to suppress Serbian nationalism. France and Britain were drawn into the conflict by alliances and concerns over German aggression. Industrialized armies ensured that any conflict would be catastrophic and rapid. Propaganda had prepared citizens to view war as honorable and necessary. Minor territorial disputes escalated into full-blown military confrontation. Europe's leaders had limited options once mobilizations began. Retreat was politically impossible. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand exposed how interconnected Europe had become politically, militarily, and socially. Nationalism, militarism, and alliances had created a situation where a single event could spark global war. Economic competition and industrial power made countries unwilling to compromise. Ethnic tensions within empires created internal pressures to act decisively. The Balkans served as the epicenter where centuries of tension could ignite continental conflict. Austria-Hungary's action against Serbia triggered a chain reaction across Europe. Germany's support ensured Austria-Hungary acted without fear of Russian interference. Russia's mobilization guaranteed that Germany and Austria-Hungary would face multiple fronts. France prepared to defend its interests and reclaim lost territories. Britain's obligations to Belgium pulled it into the conflict as German troops advanced. The assassination revealed Europe's fragile political balance and showed how pre-existing tensions could explode. Europe had become a powder keg, and the spark had finally been lit. Every major power was now entangled, leaving almost no room for negotiation or diplomacy. Military obsession, alliances, nationalism, and imperial ambitions all combined to create a situation where war was inevitable. The world was about to witness the deadliest conflict in its history to that point. Europe was locked in a downward spiral, with millions of lives at risk. The assassination acted as the trigger, but the underlying causes had been decades in the making. By August 1914, Europe had entered a war it could not avoid. Alliances ensured that local conflicts escalated into a global war. Industrialized armies and modern weapons meant that the destruction would be unprecedented. Propaganda had convinced populations that war was honorable, increasing pressure on governments. Nationalism, ethnic tension, and colonial rivalry ensured that retreat was politically impossible. Europe had become a continent on fire, with decades of tension finally exploding into conflict. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand had lit the fuse, and the continent moved inexorably toward war. Military strategies, alliances, and national pride ensured that there was no turning back. The stage was set for a war that would engulf Europe and change the world forever.